Okay, good morning. Today is Monday, the 25th day of Adar, Sheni, the second Adar. Today is actually the birthday of the Rebbetzin, the Rebbe's wife. She was born in 1901. And when this morning I walked into 770, couldn't daven there because it was filled with the girls from the schools. And the Rebbe, a month after her passing, the Rebbe encouraged people to celebrate birthdays, explaining the specialty of what a birthday is. And there's a time the neshama, the mazel, gets strengthened. The soul of a Jew that Hashem sent you to this world to fulfill a mission, and this day it gets stronger, receives its strength to be able to fulfill everything what you need to fulfill. So yeah, it is a special day, and this shir will be in her honor. And also, so we continue in chapter 38 in the Tanya. And in this chapter, we went back and forth of what is more important, the actual doing of the mitzvah or the kavanah, the meditation, the intent of the mitzvah, the concentrating of what the mitzvah is all about. And yesterday, we learned about what it says that the mitzvah without the kavanah is like a body without a soul. And the Rebbe explained this in length. What does it mean? And he explained, just like the concept of body and soul, everything in this world has a body and a soul. And in terms of the four different elements of the world, you have the minerals, you have the inanimate objects, you have the tzomeach, the things that grow, the vegetations, you have the living animals, and then you have the humans. So what is equal, what is the same by all, is the fact that God is concealed by all of them equally. You don't see godliness in anything, not in the rocks, not in the waters, not in the vegetables, and not in the animals, not even in humans. You don't see it open. You have to find, you have to search to be able to see it. But yet, you can see a difference in the creative powers, the godly creative powers. You see the difference. There is less in a rock, and there's more in a tree. You see the growth of the tree, yet more that you have in an animal. And obviously in the human, you have much, much more. You see more of the creative powers that is invested in this. So this is what it differentiates. Similarly, the Alter Rebbe explained the same thing is also the difference between the mitzvahs, the doing the act of the mitzvah, and the intent, the kavanah, the meditation. So in the act of the mitzvah, so he says by both of them, there is equal when it comes to the godly revelation. Just like in the mitzvahs of the world, just like in the physical objects in the world, there is a concealment of godliness. The will of Hashem, the God's will is not revealed in them. Just the same way, when we're talking about the mitzvahs, you have the will of God is revealed. It is the inner will that is revealed both in the act of the mitzvah and in the kavanah of the mitzvah. The difference is about the godly revelation, about how much is the expansion of godliness there is. What do I mean by that? So if you're going to ask someone, what is if you see two people doing a mitzvah, someone is doing the actual mitzvah. And if someone else, the other person is getting very involved in it, emotionally, thinking, meditating. So which one would you say has a greater connection with Hashem? So it seems like what we explained, based on what we explained earlier, that the action is most important. The action being that this is the ultimate will of Hashem. So this is the most important thing, the action. Because this is what Hashem says, and you connect, it is considered like the marriage. The action of the mitzvahs makes you one with Hashem. You're fulfilling God's will. So based on that, the meditation does not really play a major role. Why not? Because meditation and understand and the feelings, the emotions, it's about you. It's not about God. It's about how much you are able to connect. And when we're talking about the person connecting to a God, is something that person is not able to do. You can meditate as much as you want. Yes, you're gonna exhaust the abilities of what a human being can do, but still that's not gonna get you to reach Hashem, the level of God. Because meditations, no matter how much you can meditate, how much you can intellectualize and feel, it is with the limits of a human being. So therefore the question comes back, how do we say that the mitzvah without kavanah, that a mitzvah without intent is just like a body without a soul? It is, if the meditation is something that it's our thing, that's what the human is able to do, while the mitzvah itself is not a human commandment, it's a godly commandment. So similarly, it would be that the action would be the main thing. The meditation shouldn't add much in terms of connecting with Hashem. So this is what the Alter Rebbe is going to explain today. And he says, the fact that we say that the meditation, the understanding, concentration has a strong power, it is not because it's not because us, not because of the person that is able to meditate and climb up. It is because God's will, just like God's will is that we should do the mitzvah, the same way God's will is that we should meditate. He wants that we should also have the connection through our own meditation, our own feelings, and our own emotions, and our own understanding. So once this is God's will, that we should have this understanding and feelings, then you take this and you put it in the category of godly, something that is godly revelation. It's already revealed. It goes in the category it's not in the category of human, it's category of God. So therefore, once you have this act and meditation, both of them are equally godly. Both of them are equally not concealed, revealed, because this is ultimately the will of Hashem. Now that you have both in the category of the revealed God, the will of Hashem, which is revealed, then that it has an additional benefit, that the meditation and the understanding and feeling, something that it shines more in the person compared to simple act of the mitzvah. Because the simple act of the mitzvah, literally, you do the mitzvah, you do with Hashem, and it connects you completely. But the feeling and the emotions, being that this is godly, commanded by Hashem, it has the additional benefit of having this light of Hashem shine much more in you. So we're going to look at see it inside the way the Alter Rebbe explains this. That's what the Alter Rebbe said. The Alter Rebbe, "V'loi shedveikus hamachshava v'seichel la'odam bo yizborech im yitzad atzmo l'maylo midveikus ki im hamitzvos ma'asos v'prel mameh." It is not that attachment of men's thought and intellect to God is intrinsically superior to the attachment through the actual practical fulfillment of the mitzvahs that it depended on action. Come on. For as will be explained further, that the actual mitzvah really is the ultimate connection. That's why when we say, before we do a mitzvah, we make the bracha, Asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvos, and Hashem sanctified us with His mitzvahs. And this is the word kiddeshanu comes from the same word of kiddushim. When you get married, you become one with your spouse. So the same thing, when we do the mitzvah, we actually become one. So the meditation alone, the thoughts and the intellect alone, that is not what makes it. That is not what makes it a bigger connection with Hashem. On the contrary, the only reason why the kavanah has a benefit is because this itself is the will of God. God wants that we should become connected also through our intellect. Says the Alter Rebbe, rather, kavanah is superior because this too is God's will. That one attach himself to Him by intellect and thought, and by the kavanah of the active mitzvahs. And also by the kavanah, one's kavanah, the meditation, and this during the recital of the Shema and the prayer, and the other blessings. Now, once this is a God's commandment that we should meditate, the light that comes, the illumination of godly light that comes through kavanah is much more than the illumination in us that happens by the just plain acts of mitzvahs. The illumination of the supernal will that radiates and is clothed in this kavanah. This is infinitely greater and loftier than the illumination of the supernal will that radiates and is clothed in the performance of the mitzvahs themselves in action and speech without kavanah. The illumination is greater. And this superiority of kavanah is similar to the superiority of the light of the soul over the body. The body is a vessel and a garment for the soul. Just as the body of the actual mitzvah is a vessel and a garment for its kavanah. So for this reason, then the performance of a mitzvah is likened to a body, and its kavanah is likened to the soul. It is true, although both the actual mitzvah and its kavanah, they contain the same supernal will, which is perfectly simple. Meaning it's changeless and indivisible, God forbid, so that it cannot be said that kavanah contains more of God's will and performance contains less. It's not more, not less. This is the same. This is the will of Hashem is beyond divisions. And this will is united with God, with God's essence and being in a perfect unity. So both the mitzvah and the kavanah has the same God's will. Nevertheless, nevertheless, the illumination of the supernal will, how much the supernal will shines within us, in one soul, this is different in terms of its contraction and expansion. That in the mitzvah, the act of the mitzvah, that illumination of God's will is contracted. And in the kavanah of the mitzvah, the intent, the meditation of the mitzvah, there the light is more expanded. You connect more deeper. And Alter Rebbe brings now in the note, he compares it, he says this is connected with the Kabbalistic terms of the or and the kelim. In the supernal sephiros, you have the light and the vessel. This we explained elsewhere in the Tanya, that you have in the worlds, you have the different attributes, the spheres, chachma, bina, das, and so on, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. You have the emotional attributes. Each one of them has also, you have the light, the godly light, and you have the vessel. What is the vessel? The vessel is the definition of what this attribute is. Chachma is wisdom. Bin is more expanding. You have the emotional chesed, kindness. Each one has a definition. But within the definition, you have the godly light, which is beyond definition. So he says the root of the act of the mitzvah is called the vessel, the definition. And the root of the kavanah of the mitzvah is the light of the mitzvah, which is beyond definition. That's why in the kavanah, you have more expansion of the light. Continues the Alter Rebbe says in the note, it is also so explained in Eitz Chaim that the kavanah in mitzvahs and in Torah study is on the level of the light, while the body, meaning the performance of the mitzvahs, is the level and category of the vessels. These vessels represent contraction, for it is through contraction of the light that the vessels came into being, that it can become defined. As it is known to the students of the Kabbalah. Now says the Alter Rebbe, just like we said, in the world you have the four elements. The four elements, you have the inanimate objects, you have the vegetations, then you have the animal, then you have the humans. And Alter Rebbe divided them these four to two separate categories. That if inanimate and the vegetation are more connected with the body, and the animal and humans are more connected with the soul, because there you see more the soul. So it says the mitzvahs are also similarly divided into these two categories, which are four categories. Four that are divided also into two. They too, the mitzvahs and the kavanah are differentiated into four levels. Because the body of the mitzvahs themselves, they comprise two levels, namely the mitzvah is consisting of real action, as opposed to speech, which is merely regarded as action. So in the body, just like you have the difference between the inanimate object and vegetations, there's the mitzvahs, the action of the mitzvahs are also divided into two. You have the mitzvahs that are literally actions, like giving tzedakah, putting on tefillin, lighting the candle, so on and so forth. Or you have mitzvahs that are connected with speech, which is regarded as action because the movement of the lips are considered like action. That's a mitzvah at least, but the machshava, k'mo Talmud Torah, v'kriyas Shema, u'tefila birkas hamazon shah brachos. The mitzvahs performed with speech and thought, such as the the Torah study, reciting the Shema, praying, saying the blessings after meals, and other blessings. So both these levels, action and thought and speech, are subdivisions of the category of the body of mitzvahs. Then you have the soul of the mitzvahs. The kavanas of mitzvahs, the dovka ba'izbarach she'ika neshama laguf. The kavanah of the mitzvahs, and one's intention to attach oneself to Hashem by performing the mitzvahs. This, the kavanah, being like a soul for the body of the mitzvahs, that too, the Alter Rebbe is going to say the kavanah itself, the intention, the meditation, that itself is also subdivided into two categories, which is the living and the human. Likewise divided into two levels, corresponding to the two levels of soul found in material bodies, namely A, in animals, and B, in man. So how this is subdivided, that the Alter Rebbe is going to explain tomorrow. So this is the end of today's share. Again, so the Alter Rebbe is saying here basically gives us an understanding of why meditation and intention in the mitzvahs are superior in a way to the plain act of the mitzvahs. And again, it's not because we are able to reach more by meditation, more of connection of God. It is because that itself is God's will. It is God's will that we should meditate. It is God's will that we should bring Him in to our feeling, to our intellect. And therefore, when we have this connection with God's will, thereby the expansion of God's light in us, when we do the mitzvah with the intention, with the meditation, and obviously not everyone is capable of meditating in the same way. It varies different between different people. But you do whatever you can to meditate, to connect. Therefore, thereby you bring in the light of Hashem, not just connecting to Hashem, but also it should illuminate your entire person. So this is the end of today's shir. Thank you for joining. And any questions we can take now.